Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, our listeners are both wonderful and relentless. They keep sending us questions, so we keep having to do these shows. So as long as they keep sending us questions, we just have to keep doing these shows, and Buckeye Weekly turns into Buckeye Daily and eventually like Buckeye Hourly. And, if we do want to do like 60-second shows, it could be like Buckeye Minutely, but that would be a lot of questions. And also it'd be tough to turn those podcasts around in a timely fashion.
True. And I really hated the Quibi, the 8-minute TV show. Oh, I'm so angry. I did not care for that. And so no, although we could do those with videos. Totally, YouTube, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Because do as many videos as we can. I'm okay with that. But at least we got to give a bigger chunk for our podcast listeners. And this, there, just to go back to the last show, there have been some big chunks, Tom.
I wasn't gonna take us back there. I was gonna stay in the present. We're moving forward. We're not lingering in the past. And the season's coming. We better hurry up and start talking about football because the season is coming very, very soon. Less than a week.
Let's finish up with all of these listener questions. And I feel like we're going to get through them today.
Well, you are the eternal optimist.
Yes.
First one from @Brock774-11489. Can you power rank the best NIL deals in college football so far?
It's hard to do that, Tom, because the biggest deal, which was the Alabama head coach Nick Saban, said his quarterback Bryce Young had signed deals for 6 or 7 figures, and yet mysteriously we haven't heard much of any of that. So we don't even know all of these secret deals that are being kept secret, and you want your players to endorse your product, but only secretly. Don't tell anybody about it, but we want you to endorse us, but keep it on the down low. No, I think the best one so far, you got Kool-Aid McKinstry signing a deal with Kool-Aid. That makes sense. That's why I tweeted out the other day, if you are a high school sophomore or freshman at this point and you are potentially a college athlete, change your name to something like Geico Lamborghini right now. Make it so that there's no doubt that once you get into college and you can become something, that there's a name swap that can take place there. Just plan for your future. Players are graduating high school early. Do so with a name that you can turn into some money. And then we can start doing some rankings, and we can even do recruiting rankings at that point. Like, this guy's a 5-star name. Like, places are going to want him. Like, my name is Chicken Biscuit Alexander. And it's like, that guy, he's going places. He's going to get something big time.
You remember the linebacker probably 5-10 years ago whose name was Bumper Pool? Do you remember that?
He's still out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. You should be getting a NIL deal with Scioto Valley. Is that the place that has the gaming tables and that kind of stuff?
Do people still want bumper pool tables though, Tom?
In my America, they do. I don't know about your America, sir, but in your
wood-paneled wall of America.
In my rumpus room, sir, we respect bumper pool. I'm going to start closer to home. Man, I don't think anyone has yet topped the 6'14" and 300 and something pound mountain of a man, DeJuan Jones, endorsing scented candles. Scented candles, DeJuan Jones. Here's his tweet from July 1st. First day, Mountain Berry gets the job done every time. #GoPuff partner. GoPuff delivers daily essentials in minutes. Get $25 when you sign up. Mountain Berry candle, $10.49. Mountain Berry candle, 18 ounces. They hiked to the peak of the highest mountain to pick the freshest berries to bring you this fruity goodness. Go ahead. I'm just going to leave. You take as long as you want, and you go ahead and do whatever you need to try and top that, because let me tell you something, not going to happen.
No, and it's not. And the way he describes it is tremendous. And if only there's a picture of him holding it like a spokesmodel, where it would look like a very tiny candle in his hand. And then you get it home and it's the size of a bucket.
It next to DeJuan Jones, it would look like a AAA battery. And then it's like, wait, this is enormous. Is that?
I don't have room for this in my house.
Offensive lineman for scale. Yes. I mean, there have been some other good ones, but man, that was day one. And I'm like, man, the bar is real high right now. Because the candle, scented candle company, which is not what you would normally associate with a football player. And then DeJuan Jones, who is like the largest human being in history. Something about that just hit me in exactly the right spot. It was like, yes, this is it. We have day one and we've already peaked.
And if anybody's interested in knowing like how much money is being out there from Open Doors, the average compensation for a Division I athlete in the month of July was $471. And that includes big time deals of like six figures for Derek King at Miami, all the way down to whatever a scented candle deal pays. I'm guessing upwards of $40,000 to $50,000, Tom.
Give or take. Yes. Yeah.
Well, candles are expensive, man. We've all tried to buy them, and we're all like, why $15 for this candle? I want the store brand. It's only $5. And I don't care if it smells like soap and lemon. It just be scented and cheap.
So somehow our entire world has turned into that old drill tweet about somebody help my family budget. My family help me budget. My family is dying, where it's, like rent, $500, car payment, $150, candles, $2,000. Like someone help me budget. My family is dying. Yeah. Somehow NIL has turned us all into drill. So that's good. That's what we were all hoping for out of this. So that's fun. Next one from @BlackGodWayne. Are any of the freshman corners close to being ready? JK and Hancock. And this is a four-parter. So we're going to start with just the first one. JK Johnson, Jordan Hancock. I mean, from our glimpses at practice, JK Johnson seems like he's probably ahead of Jordan Hancock right now. I don't know, this is guys who enrolled over the summer. So you don't want to get too far in terms of, Jordan Hancock's never going to do anything. Like we're way far away from any kind of final decision there. But I think in order, I would say Denzel Burke, number one, and Denzel Burke was in for the spring. J.K. Johnson, just based on when we've seen practice, they keep saying his name over the loudspeaker because he keeps making plays. And then Jordan Hancock third on that list. That I think is where I think things stand. What about you?
Yeah, just based on what we hear, and I'm not even talking about what we hear from sources and stuff, just based on what you hear at practice in terms of how many names are said. The order goes, it's Denzel Burke, number one, it's J.K. Johnson, number two, and Jordan Hancock, number three, just based on hearing Quinn Temple yell out, hey, nice play, hey, nice tackle, this and that, nice play, the pass broken up, and you kind of get it's another way to, while you can't see everything, you do get to hear bits that you can't see, and you get an idea of who's making plays, and just based on that, I'm with you on that same order. But again, we heard good stuff about Hancock early on in camp. And so Burke is like, he's working with the ones and the twos, and Ja'Kalen Johnson, Jordan Hancock, maybe the twos and the threes, more of the threes. And they've still got guys in front of them like Legend Cavazos and Ryan Watts and Seven Banks and Cam Brown. So I would say with Denzel Burke being the number five, and I'm not saying he's fifth, but there's five guys ahead of those two in terms of Johnson and Hancock. So they've got some ways to go, but how much are we going to see them play? I think we'll see them. Do we see them kind of like Seven Banks and Cam Brown a few years ago when they would play in the fourth quarter, or Jeff Okudah and Sean Wade? Well, not Sean Wade, but in 2017, Jeff Okudah got some time late, and that's where those guys are. But I think you could see Denzel Burke in the first half, the other two in the second half of games. Yeah,
that sounds about right. And, you don't expect a true freshman to start at corner. That's just not a realistic. If a true freshman is in the rotation at corner at some point and they're playing him in games that are not 77-2, like, okay, that is meaningful. That is significant because there's now depth at corner where you're not necessarily just getting desperate and flinging anyone who has a jersey number, lower than 50 out at corner because it's like, well, we need someone. Hurry up, just someone go out there. The depth is there where now you only are playing guys who are really ready to play. So if guys are playing this fall, that means they're ready. And I think you're going to see some of those guys play this fall. So that's, I think that's an encouraging sign, just for the overall trend there. Is TreVeyon Henderson in the running to possibly be RB1? Will TreVeyon Henderson start, Tony? And I guess let's ask, will TreVeyon Henderson start game number one? And will TreVeyon Henderson start at any point this season?
I do not think he will start game number one. And I am less confident saying that now than I have ever been, but I still don't think it will happen. I'm not ready to say I think he will start a game this year, But if you were asked me to, an over under on 0.5, I would probably say I don't want to bet. Like I don't want any part of that. Won't be shocked, won't be surprised in the least if he does start at some point this season because he is very, very talented. I just don't want to, I'm not going to expect it, even though our expectations for him, as we've established in previous shows, are 1,000 yards rushing. So if you're a 1,000-yard rusher, I guess at some point you're probably going to start. So yes, I guess I'm changing my answer time now. I do think he gets at least one start. I'm going to toss this back to you with this. Over under 4.5 games where he leads the team in rushing just in the regular season.
Over. I'll take over. I think he's going to be. If he's the home run guy, he's going to break some long ones, which then you're piling up yardage, and then you end up, even if you have the same number of carries, if you hit one big one, you're ahead of everyone else. So I think, I'm with you. He's not starting game one. I think that would be a very difficult thing to sell to the rest of the running backs if he does start game one. And I don't think he's starting game two, but I think he's starting games, and I think he's probably starting multiple games this year at some point during the course of the year. And I think, he's the leading rusher in not all of the games, maybe not half of the games, but four or 5 games, I think is absolutely reasonable for him to think he might be the leading rusher. And we're pretty high on TreVeyon Henderson. I think what your takeaway should be there. Will G. Scott see significant playing time at tight end? And the answer, I think, is no. I mean, he will see playing time at tight end. How many tight ends are they going to play? You've got incredible depth at wide receiver. You've got running backs. You're going to want to shuffle, you're going to want running backs on the field. So how many tight ends are they going to play at any given time? 1.5, maybe. Like you're going to see a lot of Jeremy Ruckert. Cade Stover certainly seems like he's the second guy there. G. Scott, I think, is going to be a little bit more situational this year, where, he's going to be a receiver, a mismatch in that passing game. So you may see him there situationally, but I don't think he's going to be, someone who's getting 30 snaps a game, even 20 snaps a game. He may get on, against Akron, he might, if they're up by 1 million points, but in the Minnesota game, in the Oregon game, does he get, 8, 10, 12 snaps? That's probably more like what I would expect rather than 20, 30 or more snaps, just because I don't think they're going to use a ton of 2 tight ends. And if they do use 2 tight ends, that's probably Ruckert and Stover.
Yeah, and the way they've talked about Cade Stover in terms of the way Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day have both talked about him, it's synonymous with Luke Farrell. Like, we need him to replace Luke Farrell. And so that's his role, is going to be that second tight end. G. Scott is in it for the long haul. He's still a work in progress. He has said that. His father has said that. Kevin Wilson has said that. So significant playing time for me, I agree. No, yes, he will play. But when you say significant, that means rotational to me. That means like you are part of the game plan. And right now, I'm not saying he's not part of the game plan, but the plans for him are more down the line than this year. And right now with Jeremy Ruckert, and really, I think Cade Stover, I think, is going to be very, very good. And when I say that, and he looks like Luke Farrell this year, and people are like, I thought you said he was going to be good. And it's like, Luke Farrell is a really freaking good tight end. And now he's an NFL tight end. And now I'm in my inner Kevin Wilson, tight ends do more than just catch the ball. And Cade Stover is the kind of mentality that you want at that position. And it's a mentality that G. Scott also has in terms of toughness, because he loves to block, but you still have to build up the strength and build up the technique and all of that. So, yeah, and we'll see where Joe Royer fits in there. Sam Hart, I think, red shirts this year, maybe plays a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Royer is more that third guy when the times they bring in 3 tight ends because they're going to try to run the ball. It's a short yardage or something like that. I think it'll be Royer more than Scott. Scott, as you said, that's where you want to put him in space, do some things with him. You got something in mind, and then also in some blowouts.
Yeah, and then the last one from same question, is Julian Fleming wide receiver 4, or is that Marvin Harrison Jr.? And I feel like the question is, it depends. Like, is he the 4th one right now? It's like, well, who is it? Are they missing someone in the slot? And if there's someone who's in, if you lose Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot, what do you do? Do you put in Emeka Egbuka then, or do you put in Julian Fleming outside or Marvin Harrison outside and kick Garrett Wilson back inside of the slot. I mean, and I don't know that we know the answer to that yet. I mean, we talked on a show recently about, the fact that they do like the flexibility with wide receivers being able to play in different spots and being able to move guys around like that kind of stuff like that. But I mean, what do you think? Is Julian Fleming, if any individual person goes down right now, is Julian Fleming the fourth guy to go on the field? Because I feel like the answer kind of is, it depends.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think you have 2 threes in terms of, you got two groups of threes, and they kind of, the X replaces the X, the Y, the Z replaces the Z, the H replaces the H. However, these guys being so versatile, you're right. If Jackson Smith and Jigba, as you said, goes down, do they just slide? It just depends. Is Marvin Harrison better than whomever? And like, if Chris Olave goes down, I think Julian Fleming showed that he could. He was okay in replacing Chris Olave last year against Northwestern, so maybe he steps in there. But if it is Jackson Smith and Jigba, then it becomes, who is better, Marvin Harrison out wide or Emeka Egbuka inside? Because Garrett Wilson can do whatever you need. So yeah, I'm with you. It depends on who gets injured for that fourth guy to be. And if it's just in terms of who's going to be the guy who's the fourth receiver in terms of catches, it just depends on the play call and where the ball is designed. I do think the slot receiver in Ohio State's offense is always going to have the advantage in terms of numbers. So in that way, I would say maybe Emeka Egbuka. Like, which of those 6, who's going to be fourth in line in terms of who's going to be the fourth leading receiver?
I think I'd go with Emeka Egbuka there. I mean, I think, you saw him in the spring game have 120 yards receiving or something like that in the spring game. I mean, it just seems like the numbers are going to be there for him, and that's a slot thing, and that's also an Egbuka thing. I mean, right? Right? Am I wrong there?
No, I don't think you're wrong. Yeah, and that also factors into the slot. Jackson Smith and Jigba probably taking more snaps off than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, meaning Julian Fleming and Marvin Harrison will have fewer opportunities, perhaps, than Emeka Egbuka. But I also think you're going to have instances where you're going to have 4 receivers on the field, or two guys who play in the slot together, and they're going to be doing some different things. But all in all, when it comes down to who's going to have the most catches, if the slot is an option, that's probably where you want to go in this offense.
That's general. I mean, we go back to last year when we were talking about they moved Garrett Wilson to the slot, and it was just what over-unders on stats. It was just over because Kevin Wilson had an offense in Oklahoma where his slot guy had 130 catches. Like, yep, they know how to utilize the slot. So that's always, I think, the safe bet. Next one from Gehenna Rob. What are your thoughts on the new overtime rules and any other significant rules changes for this season? Now, just to refresh everyone's memory, in case you have not spent the entire offseason reading the NCAA rulebook, teams now have to go for 2, beginning with the second overtime period. Before, you could kick the extra point in the second overtime period, and you just had to start going for 2 after the third overtime. And then beginning in the third overtime this year, teams now, you're no longer going for touchdowns. It's just alternating 2-point plays beginning with the third overtime period. So it's essentially a shootout at that point. It's just, one team, it's like an NHL shootout. Like, you get through a couple things and it's just like one shot versus one shot versus one shot versus one shot. The idea, the whole point, that didn't happen previously until the 5th overtime. So now it's the third overtime. They just kind of moved everything up more or less. A couple other minor changes were they were going to extend the player sideline area to the 20-yard line permanently. Not a big deal for most people. Video board and lighting system operators cannot, quote, create any distraction that obstructs play. And the last thing was a post-game video review of guys faking injuries. So that's going to be, something else that they'll do. I don't know how well they'll enforce that. We'll see. I mean, that would be great. That's a great change. I don't know how they're going to enforce it. So therefore, I don't know how effective and meaningful it really will be. But, what are your thoughts on the overtime rules? It reminds me a little bit of baseball, kind of going, well, every once in a while we have an extra inning game that's too long. So we're going to put a runner on second now, do like the international tiebreaker from softball and just do that now permanently for Major League Baseball. What do you think about the new overtime rules for college football?
Yeah, I don't like it. And it takes some excitement away from the game. I like the potential of games going long, even though they really don't. but it's the idea that they could, and you've taken that idea away by making it more difficult for that to happen, which was obviously that's the point. But no, I don't like the. I love college football overtime, and if you're only going to allow me two of them now, because then it goes into the 2-point shootout, to me that takes some of the fun away. But how many 3 overtime games do I actually watch a year? Maybe one. That now when you're flipping around and we're actually home on a Saturday and it's like, oh, they're going to third overtime, boom, or they're going to overtime, you're locked in. But then it really doesn't ever, like, I don't know how many games this is really going to impact in terms of like how many games are we going to lose seeing 4 overtimes or 3 overtimes. That used to be like an amazing amount of fun, and now it's just, I would prefer the 2-point conversion thing. I would prefer that to be back to like the 5 or the 7-yard line. At least create a little bit more space. I would like that better.
Yeah, I am with you there on a lot of it, where in general, I like the game to be resolved by something that looks like how the rest of the game was played. That if you're not going to have ties, resolve the game. I mean, the NFL overtime has its own issues, but that's like football. I think college football had a nice kind of balance between having potentially a full extra quarter of football, which is tough with, rosters full of 18 to 21-year-old kids. And, so it was still football. You're still going from the 25-yard line. I would think maybe you start further back, instead of starting there, start at the 40 where you don't have an automatic field goal and you go 4 downs and you get nothing. Like, because you start on the 25 and it's, you can go 0 yards and kick a field goal, and it's a 42-yard field goal, which even most college kickers are going to be more than 50-50 on. So I would have moved it back, if anything, because I think you have a way to, create more variation there, and maybe you do that, and then you go to the third overtime as 2-point conversion or whatever. But yeah, I don't love it. It's fine. I get what they're trying to do. You're trying to prevent the 7 overtime LSU Texas A&M game from a few years ago. But, is this a solution in search of a problem where, yes, there was the 1 7 overtime game. And I think there was another one in the SEC, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. But it's like, I can think back to college basketball games. There was a UConn Syracuse, I think, Big East tournament game in like 2006, 7, something like that, where, yeah, it went 6 overtimes. It was like, yeah, this was an incredible game. Do you need to make a rule based on that because that was too long of a game? Like, how often do those games happen? I mean, how many triple overtime games have there been in Ohio State football history? North Carolina State in 2003. Am I missing any? I mean, is it just the one?
I think, there's been a couple of double overtimes, one in a national championship game in Michigan. But yeah, the one far long ago SEC game that you mentioned is I've talked about that on the show before, where that was the game we just randomly decided to watch. That's the game we're going to drink touchdown beers for. Like back in the day, and it ended up going like 7 overtimes or whatever. Fortunately, they were like 7 ounce, Miller Lights or whatever, but still it adds up, especially with so many overtimes. And it was a great time. I don't remember if the next day was great, but at the time, it was. The boards, the scoreboards. That's something we see almost every place we go, where they're blasting bright lights while the quarterback is like either in the huddle or like under center or in shotgun, and it's like, how is that legal? And of course, now they've finally decided to make that illegal, because we've seen that so many places.
Well, and the article pulling up from AL.com, and because I did not actually remember all those rule changes off the top of my head, sorry to disappoint you all. But the article says, quote, "This is likely in response to Oklahoma State simulating goalposts on its video board during a game versus Texas last fall," which, like, yep, that's a thing. And, Minnesota, I remember there were questions at Big Ten Media Days for the Big Ten's director of officiating about Minnesota, which has like the surprised gopher meme or whatever it is. And the video board is right behind one of the end zones. And there's like a dun, 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 big, quick zoom into the surprised gopher thing. And, that was something that people were pointing at as like, maybe that's something that needs to be looked at and not be not be something that people can do. But, stadium lighting has gotten involving. Alabama has the red stadium lighting and they flash it. And Purdue has, LED stadium lighting where after they beat Ohio State in 2018, they were flashing the lighting and that kind of stuff. Can't do that during games. So I think maybe just we're sort of enforcing those rules a little bit more. So again, like how often has that really become an issue? Probably not very often, but I guess, when it's an issue, it's an issue. So you want to avoid that if you can. Next one from Gehanna Robb, who is really carrying us in the show and will carry us to the end of the show. Thoughts on the summer enrollees? Will we see other early contributors besides JT Tuimoloau? And I mean, just going through the list, I think the 3 wide receivers were in early. Sam Hart was in early. TreVeyon Henderson was in early. Kyle McCord was in early. Quinn Ewers is, fourth on the depth chart, and it's going to be very hard for him to be a contributor. Offensive line, Donovan Jackson is someone who is already with the 2s, and as a summer enrollee, offensive lineman, like, holy smokes, that's a big, big, big leap. That tells you there's something really special there. So he's someone I think I'm not expecting him to start, because I think there's other guys who, if a guard goes down, even if it's Paris Johnson goes down, you probably kick a Matt Jones over there or something like that to, move him from left guard to right guard, because he's probably ahead of where Donovan Jackson is right now. But he's someone I think would be right at the top of my list in addition to JT Tuimoloau. But there's, we talked about J.K. Johnson at one point recently. He's someone who is probably on that list for me, because he's just, summer enrollee cornerback. That's not typically a spot you see guys make an impact, but we keep hearing about him. So therefore he's someone who, that's someone who you just, you may see him make some kind of impact this fall, but you have to kind of be realistic about what impact means. Like, this is not guy who I expect to start. This is guy who I expect to, see in the second halves and maybe be playing a little bit and, potentially making some kind of a difference, some kind of impact.
Yeah, and it's not a long list of guys that you would expect. Mike Hall being another one, defensive tackle, where we've heard good things about him, but he's going to be behind a couple of guys, and exactly like what is contributing. Yes, they're all contributors, but in terms of how many snaps per game is he contributing? There will be games where he contributes none. So it's really tough, especially with the roster this deep, and even with the corners. There's just a bunch of guys in front of them, and sure, they could move past them, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not really expecting too much out of anybody but Tuimoloau, even though, like, I'm not going to be surprised if J.K. Johnson does something.
Yeah, and the fact that these guys are even in this conversation right now is very significant. That's a big, big thing that we're even having that conversation about these guys right now. So keep the expectations reasonable. Mm-hmm. But yes, I think those are guys who, coming in this late, it was like when Harry Miller came in over the summer and was still kind of like getting reps on the offensive line. That was like, okay, this means this guy is going to be a long-term impact player. Donovan Jackson's kind of there for me. And, same thing with the guys on defense. What are your thoughts? Will the Big Ten follow the Pac-12 and Big 12 regarding forfeiting games for COVID outbreaks? And as we're like a little less than a week out right now, and so far the answer is no. My assumption is they pretty much have to. They haven't officially announced anything as of the time we're recording this. That may have changed by the time you're listening to this, but it hasn't happened yet. But I assume they have to. I don't know how you go through another year like last year, where it was just kind of like, do I feel like we can play? Well, no, I don't think, like, you can't have everything game decided by the magic 8 ball. Like, can we play this week? Ask again later. Yeah. Answer cloudy. Ask again later. Like, you have to have a standard. And if you can't meet the standard, like, there's a vaccine now, as you may have heard. Like, so you're incentivizing people to get the vaccine. You're incentivizing people to follow the distancing and yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it feels like they certainly should be following those other conferences. Wouldn't it be nice if there was this national standard that everyone just followed? But will they? Like, I don't know, Tony, will they?
Remember last year when we got the Big Ten protocols on 7.5% of this, they need this, and everybody needs to be here, or else you're in orange, or you're in green, you're in red. We've got nothing of that from the Big Ten in terms of maybe the schools have, but I kind of doubt it that they would get it, and the Big Ten wouldn't also release it to the media in terms of this is where everybody needs to be, and these are the rules going into these seasons. Since we got that kind of information last year, and it's still kind of important to know. It'd be nice to know what the rules are, and for there to be like nothing laid out right now. The fact that the one thing I don't think you can do, you can't let teams cancel games on their own. And that's what happened last year, because nobody in the Big Ten missed a game because they went past a threshold. It was all by choice. Every game was canceled by choice. One team saying, yeah, I don't want to play. If you give teams the option to cancel a game, they're going to take it in terms of like, it's going to become a thing. So remove that and then go from there. If you want to keep the same numbers from last year, keep the same thresholds, that's fine. Because if you didn't meet them last year without any vaccinations, I don't think you're going to hit them this year. So if you can't play a game, that's your own fault. And Tom, I don't know what the rule is. Like if your bus breaks down, you can't play a game. Is that a forfeit? I mean, like where at what point are you at fault? At what point are you not at fault? What point are you held responsible for not getting to a game and not having a game happen? But for me, if you can't play, you definitely should. It should definitely be a forfeit. And it would be nice to know that rule is coming from the Big Ten. It'd be nice to hear something from them here anytime now.
Well, you're the league. Literally, your job is to set the rules for the league. Like, that's a thing. And if you want to abdicate that responsibility to individual schools like that, I mean, that's fine. But I mean, at that point, like, what is it you'd say you do here? That seems like it's relatively significant piece. And you know what? If you just want to follow everyone else, just say this is what we're doing. We're setting the rules, and the rules are what everyone else says. That's fine. Like, you can't do. I mean, you were going through the chart from last year, and it's like, well, we're red here, but we're orange here and green here, and like the real specific rules. It was just, it was almost too specific last year. This year, it's a little too YOLO. Like, you just have to say, like, you want to leave it up to individual schools. That's fine. But if you decide you can't play, then you forfeit, and that's fine. Like that is an acceptable answer, that you can't play or you don't feel you can safely play. That's fine. But then you have to forfeit, or you just say, look, we're going to go shorthanded. Ohio State, I think there were probably a lot of schools, if they were in Ohio State's position before the Michigan State game last year, that would not have played. Ohio State went up there completely shorthanded. There were a lot of teams that canceled. It was like, well, we don't have our starting offensive line. It's like, okay, well, guess what? Ohio State didn't have most of its starting offensive line last year, and they went up to Michigan State and they hung 50 points on Michigan State. Like, that's a thing. That's a thing that you can do. That is a choice you can make. And yeah, I would like there to just at least be, I don't need there to be the same level of detail on this percentage and community percentages. I don't need that, but I would like a structure there of some kind. Like, you can decide, but whatever your decision is, if you decide no, then this is what that means. So
do you think, I'll interrupt you real quick. Do you think Michigan would have gone to Michigan State missing what Ohio State was missing last year?
No, I mean, I don't think that anyone would. I mean, I think you would have been hard pressed to find anyone who was willing to do that. I mean, how many teams did you see that like voluntarily played games missing that many people? I mean, virtually none. And that was Ohio State. The Maryland game got canceled because Maryland had an outbreak. The Illinois game got canceled, and Ohio State was like fighting to play that Illinois game. And that was just a function of like, there were too many question marks. Like it was like Ohio State went up to like Friday afternoon, right? I mean, that was like right up to the last possible minute. They were doing everything they could to play, and just like literally didn't have enough bodies, and they hadn't, enough questions about exposure because there were some positive tests on Friday. I mean, that was Ohio State did everything they possibly could to play, and really legitimately couldn't play. No one is going to play in those situations. I don't know that anyone else would have played in the Michigan State situation, because that was Ohio State going like, well, we have to play games. Like, we have, you had the minimum number from the Big Ten that you had to hit, and Ohio State did everything they could to play that game. And then later the Michigan game got canceled, and that was on Michigan side, not Ohio State side. So yeah, I can't imagine there would be very many other teams that would have done that, especially other Big Ten teams that would have done that last year. So, at that point, like Ohio State missed 3 games last year, and 2 of them were through no fault of their own. So I think at some point you have to kind of have a little bit of accountability for that, because you're not just screwing up your season, you're screwing up other people's seasons too. So, all right, last one from Gehenna Rob. You ranked special teams rather low when we did our. I assume he's asking about the Ohio State versus Michigan tail of the tape show, maybe that we.
I think this is about my Big Ten ratings, because I have Ohio State 5th in the Big Ten East.
Okay, so you meaning you, not you meaning us. So that's on Rob. Sorry, Tony. You ranked special teams rather low. Should we, presumably meaning Ohio State fans, be concerned?
Well, in fairness, I think I did this before it was realized that TreVeyon Henderson is apparently the number 1 kick returner for sure. So that would move Ohio State all the way up to number 1 in my book. No, I think I think there are concerns. Jesse Mirko losing his black stripe is a bit of a relief there, but bringing in another kicker to challenge your current kicker, yes, it's one way to make sure you have a good kicker. It's also another way to destroy the other kicker, like destroy your existing kicker and create issues there. And so then there becomes, now you've got 2 kickers. Tom, if you have 2 kickers, do you have none? Is it one of those things? But in terms of the return game, Ohio State has had no return game in a long time. So you can't even really factor that into other teams do it. And so that helps their rankings, at least in my book here, makes them better. But there are question marks. I think Ohio State will be fine on special teams, and Ryan Day doesn't want to be kicking field goals anyway, and he just wants somebody that can make it from 35 yards and in and be consistent. So, I think they're going to be fine. They could be one of the top Big Ten, one of the top special units in the conference. They're going to cover kicks just fine. But I think there's just so much unproven compared to everybody else. That's why I had them so low. Yeah,
you got to go back. You've got a freshman punter who you've never seen punt in a real game before, and who, our stuff that we're measuring these guys off of is rather limited. Jesse Mirko, I think, shanked 1 or 2 during the spring game. He's fine on others, but it's you've seen a shank and you've only seen 4 or 5 punts total, so that's a little bit of a concern. Jake Seibert missed a couple field goals during the spring game. That's a concern. I think he was 0 for 2 on field goal in the spring game. How much concerned can you be? That's of the 2 field goals we had a chance to see him attempt in front of a stadium full of people this spring. He missed both of them. That has to be a concern. Having another kicker come in, that is a little bit of a, that it's not a vote of confidence in Jake Seibert. Doesn't mean that Jake Seibert can't do the job. Doesn't mean Jake Seibert can't win the job. Doesn't mean Jake Seibert can't hit 90% of his field goals if he does win the job. But it's not exactly a vote of confidence. So, this is just another thing you kind of got to go, huh? And, measuring special teams, it feels like when you're assigning a special teams grade in your mind, it's basically are they going to make their field goals? What's the punt coverage going to be like? Because you just sort of in your head, you've just kind of written off kick returns at this point, and punt returns are not generally a whole heck of a lot. But if they do, they've got guys back there who can potentially be explosive and make plays. I don't think you're going to have 2017 level kick coverage issues on kickoffs. So that should probably be good. But yeah, there's enough question marks that it's not a problem, but it's a question. And maybe that's a testament to how few other significant questions there are on this team.
And they'll feel better about themselves, I would think, later on in the season, maybe when they're facing teams that, in terms of the playoffs or the postseason, where you need every inch and every point, maybe they'll feel better by that point, and they'll know more about what they have. Anything else, Tom?
I think we're done. We have finally, it only took us 3 shows. We've finally gotten through 1 show worth of listener questions. So thank you to the listeners for providing us 3 shows of content. And you're welcome for providing you 3 shows of content. It's a circle of life.
Yes. Yes, we have defeated the listeners. Thank you guys. Seriously, thank you for all of the contributions, questions. We always do appreciate it. And we always look forward to these shows because it gives us stuff to talk about that maybe we haven't, or allows us to maybe update some thoughts that we had and correct. Allows Tom to correct himself on being wrong. about previous things and allows me to confirm about being right on other stuff. So that's one of the benefits of these shows. So I want to thank you guys for that. Also, a reminder to continue to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not yet a member, I'm telling you, you should become a member. And that's just life advice. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just saying your life would be better if you're a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. And also a reminder to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop, where you get all kinds of videos, this one and many, many, many others, and many more to come. So thank you guys for listening and watching, and we will talk to you later.